I guess can see.
Yeah, we're good.
All
We're
right.
on.
Yep.
Hey, Chmack-a-Magaba, everybody. I'll get on camera fairly soon. I just want to say it's a almost human live night, and we got Edwin. What do I call you again? Fuck.
You can call me officially. I am now Edwin Cannistraci. I have consolidated the brand. So for everything, it's just Edwin Cannistraci. That is actually my name. So I'm just going by that now. But obviously, if you feel like calling me Eddie, you can call me Eddie. It's like a nickname. So
Uh, why don't I just call you Chevy Chase? Hey,
you call
what
me.
the hell? Am I upside down?
Yeah, you're upside down. That's kind of a Chevy Chase move.
What the fuck is
Yeah.
going on here?
Fun and games there.
I don't know. See if I can get on camera. Okay.
Things are getting great. It's because of the hurricane and climate
Yeah.
change. Climate change has turned Ralph around.
No, he's live from Australia.
Oh man, I don't think I can do this. Be on camera this week. Let's see if I can fix this shit.
Why in the world
No,
would you be upside down? Have you
I
got your
don't know.
phone?
We tried turning the computer the other way.
There you go.
Yeah,
You're good.
but
There you
I,
go. There you
I don't
go.
know if that'll hold.
I see it. Sammy Hagar sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my beautiful shirt.
Oh, it's cool. All of us are representing a different aspect of this episode. You got the Sammy Hagar hatred. I got real Van Halen,
Yeah.
and
Real
you
Van
got
Halen.
and you got the Saxon.
I've got the Saxon.
Right on.
Saxon.
And we just threw this together really fast too. So this was not planned.
I have my webcam upside down now, which is bullshit.
It's kind of cool. This is. You look like you're like in that right now video. It's like very sharp and clear.
Don't say
And
that.
almost spewed.
Right now, someone is hating Sammy Hagar.
Yeah, I'm
Right
just gonna
now,
do,
right
I'm just
now,
gonna show
Ralph
like
is
this.
confused.
Right now, Sammy is sucking.
I'm just gonna. I think this is a great shot of me
It is.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with
for
this
this
thing.
week.
A little touch of the gray beard. It's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. My Sammy Hagar shirt will be appearing today, not me. And it is Diamond David Lee Roth. Oh, before I get into that, I want to let all you know that tomorrow is going to be Rush Day here on my channel. I just happened to get 2 donations to Rush track by track, and I decided to do a review of Caress of Steel, and the news will be about Neil Peart's last tour. So, yeah, we're going to have the first video will be at 12, then 2, then 4, then 6 p.m. All Rush tomorrow on Almost Human.
Nice.
And,
Happy Rush Day.
yeah. And let's see what else. What else are we going to talk about? Oh, it's Diamond David Lee Roth's birthday.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
turned 70 today. Yeah,
That crazy guy.
Nice. You got the import there.
Give me a bottle of anything and a glazed donut to go.
to go. Yeah, greatest frontman I ever seen in my life in the 80s. Nobody can touch Van Halen. They were very special band, and he was, to me, the greatest. There was no frontman I've ever seen in my life that was anywhere near him. Now, I've never seen Freddie Mercury live. I've never seen Bon Scott live. So a lot of people are like, "Well, Freddie Mercury and Bon Scott, you weren't there, bitch." And all you people that say David Lee Roth wasn't the greatest frontman didn't see Van Halen in the 80s. If you say you did, you're lying. You're lying. Nobody was better than Diamond Dave, period. I mean, you can disagree all you want. If you've never seen Diamond Dave live, then I can understand that. But me, man, I mean, it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't like a cool show. Man, it was Women and Children First, Fair Warning, Diver Down, 1984, and Eat 'em and Smile. All those shows were impeccable. And that's where it ended for me. I thought Skyscraper was not a good tour.
And see that one. I saw Eat 'em and Smile. but I didn't see discography.
Little Ain't Enough. The sound was bad. I saw him in a club during a Filthy Little Mouth, and that was pretty good. But it was a different Dave, and then, but I'm talking about 80s Dave, man. That was the shit. And if y'all, don't agree, that's fine. That's fine with me. Hold on. I got to scratch my balls.
The whole LA scene, all the front men, they owe their careers to David Lee Roth. I mean, he's the ultimate front man. He might not be the best singer, but he is the best front man to come out of the 80s. That's for sure.
And I love his voice back in the day.
I do too. I think it works perfect with what they were doing.
It was so human. You don't need no fucking fancy schmancy shit. It was all attitude. You hear that guy sing stuff like Mean Street and Hear About It Later. That's an amazing voice. It's a lot of people, Sammy Hagar's voice sucks. That voice is not good. All right. I know some of you think he's got a good voice, but no. And yeah, Easy Street on that EP is awesome. I love that EP. But yeah, Sammy Hagar sucks. David Lee Roth rules, and it was a dark time in the 90s, when Van Hagar was the whole, so popular, and David Lee Roth was losing popularity.
Yep.
Man, I was horrified back then. I was like, how is this fucking Sammy Hagar shit popular? It sucks. Well, now, in retrospect, as years have gone by, many people did see that Sammy Hagar music was very dated. And those fucking lyrics. I want to look straight up to her lunch pail. What is that? Another one he said, I like to have some of that fine piece of real estate. Yeah. What a genius that idiot is. Fuck Sammy Hagar Belcher and his wife, Michael Anthony. That's what I think. Van Halen rules. Vangina sucks.
What's your favorite? What's your favorite David Lee Roth show that you saw, Ralph?
Well, the greatest show I ever saw in my life was Fair Warning. And here's the weird thing about the Fair Warning tour. I saw Women and Children First the year before, second row seats. It was the best show I ever saw in my life. Then I went the next year to see Fair Warning in the nosebleeds, and it was even better. Diver Down was great. It was all stellar, but there was something about that Fair Warning show. Everybody in between songs were pounding on the chairs. I have never seen a crowd in so much of a frenzy as it was with David Lee Roth and Van Halen. There was just something so magical about that band. And I think another great component of how great they were live, they always had a piece of crap band open. A band nobody would know about. I mean, 1984, they had Autograph, but Autograph didn't have an album out yet.
Nobody knew who they were.
Nobody knew who they were.
And they sounded like teetotal shit. I mean, when I saw that tour, the acoustics were just not good in that arena to start with, but I couldn't make out anything Autograph was playing, but I remember the record came out later that year and we're like, okay, well, I guess these guys are okay. They didn't sound like that when I saw them.
Yeah. And the Fair Warning tour, they had a band open that didn't have a guitar player. It was a drummer, a keyboard player, and a singer that played bass. And they were hella bad. Oh, I forgot the name of the band. But
were people hostile? Like, did they throw things at the opening acts or like boo them?
I don't remember ever the bands getting even like booed. I guess
it was more just disinterest.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was people behaved until Van Halen came out. Then nobody behaved. It became, fucking mayhem in that place. I've never seen a band in my life do what Van Halen did to the audience. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable how I can't express in words, man. Man, all I can tell you, man, on the Fair Warning tour, the way that shit started, they had all the spotlights going on. Hey, will you welcome the mighty Van Halen? And they go into On Fire, but the whole stage is black. And then when it goes, and the band kicks in, the whole stage lights up. And the first thing you see when the stage lights up is David Lee Roth 20 feet in the air doing a split.
Yep.
And the place went ape shit from there to the end. And then when they did Center Swing, David Lee Roth said, she looks so fucking good. Right when he said that, the crowd drowned the band. They just went fucking ape shit. And Dave would come out center stage for like 2 or 3 minutes without saying a word, just looking surprised. I know he does this every show, but still, yeah, he'd go out there and like, oh my God. And then he'd look back at Al. Look at how crazy they're going, Al. But that was everywhere they played, you know. But still, it doesn't matter. We were all, it was pre-internet. We didn't know what Dave did the day before or day after. Like with the, hey, I'm going to fuck your girlfriend, pal. He was doing that every night. We didn't know. You know, it was just a special time. You say fuck on stage and the place would go ape shit. It was a different world back then. We don't live in that world anymore. And I even noticed that with David Lee Roth. When I saw David Lee Roth later on, he did that shtick on stage. Fuck this, fuck that. Pin drop. It's just not the same audience anymore. Nobody got it, you know? But hey, man, all I know is I lived it, man. If I get killed tomorrow, I saw original Van Halen 4 times, bro. So I can't complain. What does Dave mean to you, Edwin?
He means a lot. I want to just piggyback on the Fair Warning show because that's what really got me into Van Halen. Well, I will say one thing before, I was introduced, I'm a child of the 80s, so I was in grade school when like 1984 blew up. Like that like a lot of kids in my age bracket, you know, people in my age bracket, it was Jump in Panama and Hot for Teacher and you know, that was all over MTV and it was right when I started watching MTV. Like it was like a little after, I guess like a lot, it was like Thriller that kind of got me into watching MTV. And 1984, which would have been a #1 album if it wasn't for Thriller. Like a lot of big albums released that year, like because Thriller was still #1, even though it came out back in '82. But those videos were all over the place. And David Lee Roth, like shortly followed that up with the EP that you flashed earlier. And so I kind of was almost thinking, I think because my name was Eddie and it was like Eddie Van Halen, I was a little focused. Hey, that guitarist looks cool and his name is Eddie. And so I like that. But I think within a year or so, it was like all about Dave. Like that's funny, by like 90 or 91, he was kind of this like butt of jokes, you know, and Van Hagar was bigger during that period and everyone was kind of making fun of David Lee Roth. But I could tell you like from like 84 to like 86, David Lee Roth was like bigger than Van Halen. Like he was the star. He was the MTV star. It was Dave TV. And like, so he was a very big part of my childhood at that period, just as a big star in his own right. And, you know, as a little kid too, he's someone that could appeal to an adult or a child because he is kind of he's very cartoonish and stuff. And all those like videos that he was doing, I really liked as a kid. However, I wasn't quite at the age where I was like buying my own music yet. Like I had like, you know, fucking Mickey Mouse records and shit like that. It was a couple years later and suddenly I was like in junior high and now like kind of a headbanger kid. And I saw them doing that clip of them doing Unchained from the Largo performance from the tour that Ralph says is the greatest tour he's ever been to. And, you know, it doesn't surprise me because even though, unfortunately, I was not at that tour, I could just tell just from watching the clips on YouTube, just those Largo clips. And I've seen like also like raw, like bootlegs of it too, like of them doing On Fire and stuff. And you could get the energy, you get what Ralph's talking about from just watching the YouTube clip. Like you could just get it. And I got it watching it and this was a time period where I was like getting into Metallica and a lot of thrash music, and I was like really into AC/DC and stuff. And when I saw that Largo clip of Unchained, and it was just like everything from Dave to the guitar playing, the Brown sound, that song I never heard Unchained before, so that's like the first time I heard it too, and just that performance, I was just totally blown away, and that's what made me go, oh fuck, I gotta like get into Van Halen. I kind of thought of them, I guess, more as a pop group because of 1984, like a pop rock group. I didn't realize they were like that heavy and rocking. Like so the first Van Halen album I bought with my own well, allowance money. It wasn't really my money, my parents gave it to me, but was Fair Warning. I went out and got Fair Warning, and then I think I got Women and Children First like a week or two later, and then I had all the Dave era albums. The only one I didn't have for a while was like Diver Down, because I was like, oh, it's all covers. I don't really care about that. And of course, later on, I got it and realized half of it wasn't covers, and it's awesome. But for a while, I just had the original ones, all the other albums, and I was just immediately. It was like an immediate thing. Fair Warning, and maybe that's why Fair Warning has still always been my favorite album, because that was the gateway for me. But yeah, I mean, those clips from Largo, they're just, I can't imagine. The only thing I could say that might be even comparative, like it would be maybe if you saw like Jimi Hendrix in the late 60s, people saw like The Experience. I can't really think of anything that would be kind of close in terms of, and I'm even talking, I mean, stuff like Bon Scott or very early 80s, like Brian Johnson era AC/DC. Those Largo performances are really fucking awesome too, and pretty up there. But I don't know. I don't think anything really touches from what I've seen. Maybe Led Zeppelin, mid 70s. Like I've seen some of those clips. They're really up there. So that's what it comes down to. It's like Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, and maybe Van Halen are the greatest live clips I've ever seen on YouTube. And I think too, and I talked about this. I did Van Halen, just Rankoramas. I did a David Lee Roth solo one as well. It's not just, especially if we're focusing on Dave, and I do agree with you guys that he is the best front man for a band. Like the only two artists I would kind of compare him to would be actually not band leaders, but solo artists like Elvis and James Brown, like who are two of the greatest entertainers of all time, in my opinion. And Dave's like, yeah, he doesn't have quite the same vocal range, especially not the same vocal range as Elvis. But it's that command, the way he can command a stage. And yeah, he kind of morphed into a different thing in the 90s. But man, with that first solo album and the classic Van Halen era, every clip I see of him, he looks like he is the greatest frontman for a rock band I've ever seen. And I mean, from the splits to the attitude, even like you said, like just when he's just like looking out at the crowd and just that magnetism. Like he does a lot, but he doesn't even have to do a lot. You just look at him and it's like all eyes are on him. And this is a band that has fucking Eddie Van Halen, who has a lot of charisma on stage. He did back then. He did his little jumps here and there, and he had a good stage presence. It wasn't just the guitar playing. In a lot of other bands, Eddie would totally have been the focus. But David Lee Roth, fucking Diamond Dave, you have to look at that guy. He was the greatest frontman, in my opinion. Plus, I also think he's a very underrated singer, especially back then. I mean, people talk about range a lot. Like the difference is, when people talk about actors, I think they got it more right, because they're talking about range is like how many different kinds of parts can you play? Like that's how they think of it. But a lot of like rock and metal fans, when they talk about singer's range, they talk about like they're thinking just technically like notes, like, oh, you hit this note, you hit that note. And I don't think that's the way to think about it. To me, it's like about like what kind of moods can you create? What kind of songs can you sing? Thing is, David Lee Roth pulls off a lot of different, especially during classic era Van Halen and a lot of his best solo stuff. He does like ragtime jazz. He does crooning stuff. He does hard rock. He does like good like kind of R&B influenced stuff. He does scatting, jazzy. Like he does a lot of different moods. And like maybe Sammy Hagar could hit a couple notes on like Dreams that Dave couldn't hit, but Sammy Hagar couldn't sing songs like Secrets or Little Dreamer or like he couldn't croon with that kind of soul. Like I think Little Dreamer has a little bit of a Jim Morrison kind of quality. Like he
Yeah, for
brings
sure.
and also like he pulls off like doing like Sinatra songs, and he did Beach Boys songs, and then he could do really hard rock and shit like fucking On Fire, where he's doing like Halford type shit on that song. Like you could throw him just like kind of anything. He was closer to like John Lennon and Paul McCartney, where they could like sing really gentle stuff or really heavy stuff. And so I think it's the opposite. I was like, you guys need to check, what you think about what range is. Because to me, David Lee Roth had actually more range than most rock singers because he could sing all kinds of songs and also pop stuff. Like he could do that synthy, like more corporate pop rock stuff too, like Sammy did. Like he did it with like I'll Wait, and he did it better. Like I'll Wait is like a 5150 song, but better, with
Yeah.
more personality, a little more sensuality. So like, yeah, I mean, it's just the two different, totally different calibers of singers, in my opinion. David Lee Roth has far more range by my definition of range than Sammy Hagar does. And David, he's great. And he's also, his birthday is very close to mine. Mine's October 9, just like John Lennon, Alpha Libra. And David Lee Roth is also an Alpha Libra, like John Lennon, October 10. Very close. I'm sure Dave was very aware of that. He was probably, as a kid, thinking, oh, cool, my birthday's close to John Lennon's. And
Yeah, I want to wish you happy birthday. I didn't see it yesterday. I would have wished you one.
that's
Uh,
all right. We were staying, you were concerned about the storm. So, we were
yeah.
talking. That was the more important thing.
You
So,
were born on the same day as John Lennon.
yeah, we're both October 9.
Did
Yeah.
you have a kid that you abandoned?
Not to my knowledge.
Because John Lennon did.
Yeah, he wasn't the nicest guy in the world, but
Hey, John
good guy
Lennon,
too.
that John Lennon in that song Imagine, song Imagine by John Lennon.
Yeah.
Remember the line, imagine no possessions, it isn't hard to do, from a guy that owned a mansion in West Palm Beach, a ritzy apartment in New York, and a mansion in England. Imagine no possessions. Get the fuck out of here.
That's it. Yeah, I'm gonna say it right now. I'm not a fan of that song. I kind of get it, but to me, that's like something. It sounds like he wrote in 5 minutes, and it's fake. It's fake. It's not really him to me. Like actually, How Do You Sleep? That's more real John Lennon because he's being like a bastard and he hates Paul McCartney, and that feels like, oh well, now you're being yourself. You're being real because you're kind of a mean spirited guy. That's real, John.
Yeah,
That's fake John.
I like some John Lennon soul stuff, but to me, he peaked on White Album.
I do agree. I do like his solo stuff. I think a little bit better than you, but I agree.
You got to come together, and I Want You. She's like, all cool songs.
Oh yeah.
Nothing as good as I'm So Tired, Glass Onion.
Oh no, White Album. Happiness.
White Album is his peak. His peak.
Prudence. Happiness is a Warm Gun. Yeah. It's Sexy Sadie, Your Blues, Cry Baby Cry. Yeah, I think that's peak. It's my favorite Beatles album too, but it's my favorite. I think it's John Lennon's peak. I think Paul. I don't know. Paul might have peaked a little bit after. I don't know. I really love Ram.
I like Paul McCartney solo much more.
I do like. I do.
A lot of things that people don't realize is John Lennon could have sued the hell out of the guy that made his glasses because of Yoko Ono. He's still in love with Yoko Ono because he got the wrong prescription glasses, right? It's on it. And he had some ear problems. He couldn't hear her scream. But hey, enough of John, that scumbag. But it sucks that he died. I wish I could have seen the video.
Oh yeah, he was a great songwriter. But Dave, I think Dave growing up, and Dave too, like he grew up in a time period where he had like all the right influences. Like he had like Motown, soul, British invasion, rock and roll, California rock, like the Doors and shit. Like he had all these influences, and his father, wasn't his father like a radio personality or something?
No, his dad was a doctor that was so famous and rich that they dedicated one of those shows in the 80s, Lifestyle of the Rich and Famous, to David Lee Roth's dad. You can see it on YouTube.
Okay, I'll have to watch it. So yeah, so he grew up with some influence, like he was around entertainment. Like wasn't he like a doctor for the stars or something?
No, his uncle in New York owned Cafe Wha that had Jimi Hendrix play
That's
there.
it. And Bob Dylan played there. That's right.
Yeah,
Sorry, it was like, he was actually like the guy who discovered Bob Dylan. That's right. So like he had connections, like he understood the entertainment world, and that's why I think like he like even knew like the old jazz singers and the crooning stuff. Like so when he like joined Van Halen, like he was the one bringing in that like barbershop quartet shit, like and like I'm the one and stuff like that. Like he was bringing this whole other element, and like even like I think Hot for Teacher is like a great example of like no other rock singer would do what he did with that song. Like, you know, it's like the way he like especially because it's a weird song. You got the drum beat, it's great drum beat, and the guitar playing. It's like not an easy thing that screams what the melody of the song should be, you know? And he comes in with this whole scatting kind of cool thing. And I don't think maybe ZZ Top, there's not who, you know, they were all fans of as well, but not a lot of rock singers. Sammy Hagar definitely would not have come up with something like that. I was like looking, you know that shitty song on OU 1812. I think it's called Source of Infection. I had to look that up. I didn't remember. But it's kind of a song where it's kind of like a shitty Hot for Teacher musically. Like Eddie's doing like some noodling around, he's soloing, and Sammy's like trying to do a Dave thing. He's like trying to scat, and it's just a bunch of nonsense. It's like word salad, and it's just like deep da zeep za what, and it's like embarrassing. It's really stupid. And whereas Dave went in with Hot for Teacher, and he creates this whole narrative, this whole story, and he makes it something. And I think that again, he came into this group, even though he was just in his 20s, with all this knowledge of past music and entertainers and TV shows and radio shows. Like you could tell he was bringing so much to that band. So that mashed with Eddie's genius as a guitar player, like, you know, like you could, to me, as great as Eddie was, if Dave wasn't there kind of guiding him and pushing him, I don't know. I mean, yeah, Eddie would have been there. He would have been like one of the great guitarists of the 80s. But I don't know if Van Halen, those songs would have been shaped the way they were without David Lee Roth. I think he's underrated as as a contributing songwriter to that band.
that's what Ted Templeman said. Ted Templeman wanted Sammy Hagar in Van Halen when they were recording the first album. And Nanny said, in retrospect, I would have made the biggest mistake in rock and roll history because Van Halen would have never happened without Dave. If you would have put Sammy Hagar on the first Van Halen album, I don't think it would have taken off. I don't think it would have been the phenomenon. And
No, it would have been like just another Montrose kind of album.
but like what
Yeah.
Tony said earlier, I mean, David Lee Roth was the blueprint of all the hairman band. It wasn't Eddie Van Halen. Yeah, Eddie Van Halen, Vito Bratta and shit stole his.
He changed the face of guitar,
Yeah,
the way guitar was being
but
played.
Dave changed the face of frontmen. The
The
80s.
performance, the show.
Yeah.
He was a full showman.
Everybody wanted to be David Lee Roth, and the worst offender of that was Paul Stanley. The worst. Trying to be David Lee Roth, going into the nurse and doing. I mean, I remember.
Oh yeah, that '80s Paul Stanley. Yeah,
I remember seeing that Animalized tour, going, "My God, this is pathetic. This guy's really trying to be David Roth badly." And he even did splits and shit, Paul, back then.
Oh yeah, even like the way he was dressing a little bit and the spandex and
Yeah,
everyone, they all were.
somebody in the chat mentioned Jim Dandy, and of course Dave took a lot from Jim Dandy. He took a lot of the look from Jim Dandy, but Jim Dandy didn't have that kind of pizzazz on stage. He didn't have the raps. He wasn't doing the splits off the stage and stuff. I mean, the look, the blonde hair, and the bell bottoms and all that stuff. That was, and some of the moves, I'm sure. But man, Dave was more vaudeville. He brought more vaudeville into that whole rock and roll thing.
You know who said that too? Jim Dandy. Jim Dandy said, "I don't think Dave ripped me off. Dave did his own thing." Now I do see it. I see like the moves and the hair. I see Jim Dandy and David Lee Roth in some of the aspects. but I don't think David Lee Roth. People make fun of David Lee Roth's voice. Imagine if he sang like Jim Dandy, you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
Dave had a much better voice, much better command of music, much better songwriting, much better, fucking lyrics. I mean, look back in history, Jim Dandy, David Lee Roth. Who was influential, more influential? Jim Dandy only influenced David Lee Roth. David Lee Roth influenced the 80s.
That's it, totally.
Yeah,
but anyway, Tony, what does Diamond Dave mean to you?
Like I said earlier, I mean, he's the greatest frontman. He definitely influenced all the 80s groups. I love his performances. I love his lyrics. The whole everything from his campiness, to even his more serious side. I mean, he could be a comedian over here, and he's a vaudeville performer, like I mentioned a while ago. He can be a rock god as well, and he is. I mean, cheers to David Lee Roth. Happy 70th birthday. The dude made it to 70. I mean, he partied big time back in those days too. He was a big time partier. You hear about Motley Crue telling stories about him coming and crashing their parties and stuff. I mean, he definitely. And if anybody just read his book, Crazy from the Heat, I mean, there is some great stories in that book. I mean, he went on a lot of jungle adventures and that, all sorts of just craziness.
Yeah. I knew a girl in the 90s where her ex-husband owned a cigar shop on South Beach, and Dave was always there doing blow. He would be in the back doing blow with her and him, and she got a picture of Dave with her, not doing blow, but they're together. And this girl wasn't like a Van Halen fan or a rock fan. She was just like, yeah, I got David Roth, Van Halen. I did coke with him. You would come in the cigar shop all the time. So yeah. And then in the Motley Crue book, talks about him doing blow, and a mirror fell on him while he was doing blow. Dave was known as a cokehead.
You could tell from a lot of those interviews, especially in the late 80s. If you've ever watched some of those in the early solo career period, he's very cokey in the interviews.
Oh, he's always wired,
Smart stuff.
And I mean, but he's always been an off the cuff speaker. It's almost like you wonder, his brain is just churning and he's just saying stuff sometimes, and he's creating stories as he's talking, and he still does that. And if you've seen that Joe Rogan interview that he did like a year or two ago, he is just totally whacked out. You think this dude is just turned into a senile old man, but really he's saying some of the same stuff he said when he was, 30 years old, but like more power to him. And, and I'm not a Sammy Hagar hater. I mean, I like some Sammy Hagar, but Van Hagar and Van Halen is two different bands. And Sammy Hagar was always jealous of David Lee Roth. I don't care what you say, because he knows that's the fans. That was the guy, and he had to go in there and fill those shoes, and it was tough for him. And he could have been a little more easygoing about it instead of just bad mouthing him, but he didn't do that.
Constantly have to bring up how he was more successful. Like in a recent interview, Sammy goes, Dave just can't accept that I was more successful than Van Halen. Somebody put up something very interesting in the comments on YouTube showing me the Spotify stats.
Oh, they got to be brutal.
It's all Dave, and the bottom two is Sammy Hagar.
Supposedly,
with the Sammy stuff, when it finally does get to the Sammy stuff, it's only the hits, because girls are listening to the hits maybe. But with Dave, you probably not just have the hits on the top. I bet you start getting the deep cuts too that are popular.
Oh yeah.
Whereas like no one's listening to a deep cut from Sammy Hagar.
And Van Hagar sold half as much.
Oh yeah, especially by now. I mean, the first Van Halen album in 1984 alone, didn't they outsell every Van Hagar album?
Yeah, in '84. Yeah, and
they didn't have a number one album with Dave didn't have an album go number one.
No,
they did with Sammy, but that doesn't mean the sales
that
were as
doesn't
good.
mean anything. It
That just means that week
and,
they sold more records.
And they never had a number one single with Sammy, but they did with Dave.
Yeah, what's
Nobody
that?
will bring that
I mean,
up.
you know, Aerosmith did not have a number one single until that shitty Armageddon song. You know what I mean? Like, does it matter?
Wow. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
no, it doesn't matter. But when people want to bring up the fact, well, they had number one albums with Sammy, it's like, you got to educate these guys. It's like the story of the tortoise and the hare. Yeah, the hare kicks out in the beginning, but then in the end, the tortoise wins.
But in 1984, only did not go number one because of Thriller. You know, that's one of the reasons why Dave was pissed at Eddie, because he felt like contributed to the album that kept them.
Now let's analyze this for a second. 1984 did not go number one, right? 5150, the highest selling Vangina album, went number one with 6 million copies sold. 1984, over 10 million copies, which shows you number one albums don't mean shit.
Nope.
I mean, even album sales don't mean shit. But if you're going to rely in your argument that Vangina went number one, it's like, okay, then I'll throw this. That doesn't really mean much, but I'll say if it's number one, then it's still inferior to 1984 because 84 sold more. Since number one means so much to you, shouldn't album sales mean much to you? Vangina fans are stupid. I'm not even talking about the ones that want to argue with me about shit. You can't argue with me with facts. It's facts. David Lee Roth and Van Halen sold more. Their tours with David Lee Roth at the end were the highest selling Van Halen tours. It's just ridiculous. I mean, you can like your Vangina, you can say all that, but you cannot bring up the argument of, oh, they had number one albums.
And also,
I'm being a dumb Vangina fan.
Picture if Dave didn't leave Van Halen. Just imagine this. Like, humor me. Imagine, like, he brings some of the songs from Eat 'Em and Smile. Eddie brings, you know, some of the better songs from 5150. But with Dave, like Dave coming up with lyrics for them, you know, and that's the next album. Do you imagine how big that album would be? And then imagine if they kind of kept with that. Like, again, they both diminished in quality as they went along. But imagine if they kind of stuck together. I mean, they'd be headlining stadiums by, you know, early 90s, and they would be like this established. They would be like the Rolling Stones almost by the 90s if they didn't split up, in my opinion. That was like the trajectory. The trajectory was that they were going to be the biggest American band. Like, it was kind of like the Police were kind of like that for England, and then they split up too, you know. But it was kind of like in the first half of the 80s, it looks like it was pretty much Van Halen in the US and Police in England. And then both bands, you know, their blonde singers thought they were a big star and left. And that was it. And then other bands like U2 and shit, you know, Metallica and stuff, Guns N' Roses, come in and kind of fill that void. But if Van Halen had just kind of stuck there with those guys, I don't know if there was any way with their personalities that would have happened. There wouldn't even be a debate. Like, what I'm saying is Vangina, whatever they would have been with Dave in the late 80s would have been bigger.
Better.
And it would have been better. Yeah. Well, yeah, obviously it would have been better. And it would have been even bigger. And they would have just been one of those institutions by the time you got into the 90s that just like never missed a beat, you know, in my opinion. But because they split
Possibly, man.
Yeah.
Van Halen just doesn't work without David Lee Roth. I don't care if you get Ronnie James Dio and Van Halen. It doesn't have that. You need that natural, not so technically great voice with attitude. That's what made Van Halen huge. The Sammy Gina fucking Hagar thing, that was only because Van Halen was the biggest band on the planet, that whatever they released next was going to be successful. 1984 was their biggest selling album at the time. He walked into the biggest band in the world.
Again, the follow-up to 1984.
Yeah, if they would have got Patti Smythe, if they wanted to, what they wanted, or they wanted Daryl Hall.
Never would have worked.
But in '86, it would have went #1 because it's the next album. But hey, look, you may like it, but I don't think it worked with Sammy Hagar, and that shit went #1. It did not work for
I
me.
will say, I think in terms of a purely mid to late '80s like landscape, it did work. I mean, from just a commercial standpoint, because it's like Eddie still had a little hangover of songwriting that he developed with Eddie Van Halen. He still had a couple keyboard hooks, a few memorable hooks here and there. Sammy Hagar, I will say, I mean, I'm kind of with Tony. I'm not, I'm somewhere between you guys, I think. I wouldn't say I'm a fan. I don't hate him quite as much as you do. I do agree with a lot of the things you're saying about the bullshit, about the stats he says and stuff like that.
Oh
I,
yeah,
th-
same here.
there's no comparison. To me, they're different leagues of singers and entertainers. But I would say Sammy Hagar is like sufficient for as a generic middle of the road kind of hard rock singer. And in the late '80s, keep in mind, this is where there's a lot of shit bands out. Now we're getting into the second wave of hair metal bands. We got the Poisons, the Bon Jovis, all that stuff, and Bryan Adams is popular, stuff like that. I'm just saying that the landscape, things start sucking, as you always bring up, Ralph, after '84. So the musical landscape itself has dropped.
No, and it
So
wasn't.
I think Sammy Hagar was like sufficient for that musical landscape. Like he was a blonde singer that had kind of a raspy hard rock voice. Eddie was kind of like could kind of still write a tune a little bit, and they're following 1984. So like all those elements made it like work. Now, does it work like 20 years later? Is it a classic that holds up to classic Van Halen? No, but for like '86, '87, it worked. I mean, it worked for most people. There were some people. I have read reviews of like that, like the tour for 5150, where there were critics saying like, "Oh, this band's a mess now. They kind of suck." Like there were some
No,
people.
let me tell you, the show I saw, I wasn't going to go see Vangina, but my friend had free tickets and Bachman Turner Overdrive was opening, and I dig them. So I went to the show, and Bachman Turner Overdrive was great, but man, Vangina was terrible. I mean, this is like the biggest band in the world, and they ain't playing their songs. They played like Panama. That's it, and you really got me.
Yeah, they definitely weren't a live act with Sammy. That's the thing. They stopped
But they,
being that. Like they were just kind of like a Mr. or a
yeah,
Loverboy.
It
They
was
were
it was
a
a
radio
it
hit.
was a it was a kind of a almost unrehearsed, just like a jammy band. They would just get up there and just play some songs and goof off. And I was going to say earlier, talking about the difference in when Hagar didn't have to talk so much smack. Um, Seeing Van Halen on 5150 and OU 812 tours, they were just constantly holding up signs and stuff that people were supposedly throwing from an audience. Dave sucks and all this stuff, Well, supposedly there was stuff being thrown on the stage at the Eat 'Em and Smile tour as well. I saw some stuff, and Dave didn't even acknowledge it. I mean, they'd have some
oh
Sammy
yeah.
Hagar sucks. Eddie said Dave didn't even
Oh,
acknowledge it. He just
Dave even said that in interviews that, oh, they throw that up on stage all the time. I refuse to pick it up. But my point was when I saw that Vangina show with BTO the next day, and I still have it, man. This fucking review of the show. I mean, this guy fucking hated it even
Yeah, I
more
read.
than I did. I mean, the guy went off on how terrible it was. And it's like, and he said something that I say all the time. He said, with David Lee Roth, they were the greatest live band I ever saw in my life. With Sammy Hagar, they are the worst live band I ever saw in my life. And I agree with that, man. And by
Like
the
they
way,
were really bad live.
and very important, Edwin and Tony, you were both saying, yeah, we don't hate Hagar, this and that. This is an honest question for both of you. Don't you think that maybe you both have to go to like, major mental therapy for not hating Hagar? I wonder what you think of that.
I mean, well, I'm not saying
possibly.
Yeah.
I think it's possible. I mean, there's a couple Van Hagar songs that I think are decent songs in and of themselves. Like I think
Q-tips are your friend.
I was gonna say Black and Blue is a good song. I like Summer Nights. There's a couple
Yeah,
songs
I like some. I mean, I like some of his solo stuff, his old solo stuff, like from the
Yeah,
'70s.
I like Montrose.
I love
I know
Montrose.
you do like the first
I
Montrose album.
love that first Montrose record.
The
It's
first
great.
Montrose album. I do admit that Scooter song's stupid, but the rest of the album's good. But I
But
mean,
my issue with Sammy
I
is a
like
lot
if
what Ralph goes on about, just the stuff that he says, just nonsense.
oh yeah,
And
well that's
kind of
yes.
talks out of his ass. And I read his autobiography, and after I read that, I was like, I had a totally different outlook on the guy. I was like, God, man, he's just, I mean, this book should be called Why I'm Right and Everybody Else is Wrong. He's such a narcissist.
It's got listen, most singers are like this. They're like actors this way. They're divas. They're divas,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
all about. I mean, listen, even though they're, yeah, I mean, obviously Ronnie James Dio was a great replacement and awesome, unlike Sammy Hagar. If we're talking about when he stepped in after Ozzy and Black Sabbath, so in that sense, they're total opposites. Plus, Ronnie always seemed like a really straight up, cool, nice guy. I know when you met him, Ralph, you said he was very nice, and I've heard that from a lot of people. And he always seemed
The
like a nice guy.
best.
He's a nice Italian guy from New
Funny,
York.
Madam,
Loves his grandmother.
He wasn't fond of Ozzy. He
No,
always
but that's what I'm getting at.
down
What I'm
on
getting
Ozzy.
at is Ozzy and Ronnie were really cunty about one another. They're really cunty about one another. I know if Ozzy, I kind of blame that more on Sharon. I don't really feel like Ozzy would be that cunty on his own. I think he's influenced, but Ronnie is kind of cunty about Ozzy. So there is a deep.
At the time, Sharon had a fallout with her dad. So that's why they got the little Ronnie that they would hang at Ozzy shows.
They keep
That
that
was
up
all
in the
Sharon.
90s.
It wasn't Ozzy.
But the way that, and then she wouldn't let them use the heavy, the name Black Sabbath, the contractual stuff in the 2000s.
I'll be right back.
I know that was more about money than anything else. But I just say that there's a natural competition between singers, big singers. They're divas. They're the star. And Ronnie James Dio, like Sammy Hagar, these are guys that were stars. Even I mean, Sammy Hagar did have that. It was a one-hit wonder, but it was a big hit in the mid '80s at that time period. And he was in Montrose before that, and and a solo artist. So he's coming into that band with an ego, thinking I'm the guy. Like, since I was a teenager, I was the guy that was going to be like Robert Plant, that's what Sammy Hagar thought, and he's stepping into this thing where there's this other guy that was like really the guy, David Lee Roth. And, it's not like Sammy's not going to stop thinking he's the guy, because he's been thinking he's the guy since he was like 14 years old, probably playing with some shit.
Oh, yeah. Egos. Yeah.
Yeah. He's going to have that ego. And it's not even about, but I wonder about his taste, because there was one thing where he said he didn't really start listening. He wasn't paying attention to Van Halen until Jump. He said that in a quote, like, "Oh, Jump was the song that made me think, oh, these guys might be on to something."
The guy was never a Van Halen fan. He claims he's a Van Halen fan.
Who said that? Who just as a general rock fan, a man in his, what was he like in his, I guess early 30s at that point? What kind of man in his early 30s in the 80s only starts paying attention to Van Halen with Jump?
No, and he even said,
I was like a child in elementary school. That's why I started with Jump. Why was Sammy Hagar starting with fucking Jump?
Well, Sammy Hagar claims he was a big Van Halen fan, and then he references the song Jump. Instead of Running with the Devil, ain't talking about love or something from the back. No, Jump. Out of all their songs. Fuck that guy. I hate to cut us off here, but this is something very important. I was never fond of Mr. Cannistraci because he stole my Dokken album, vinyl, Beast from the East. I don't like that you stole that from me, Edwin. So Edwin went to his mom's house because the hurricane, right? And when he did, I broke into Edwin's house and got back what's rightfully mine.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, that's right. I stole it. He's actually going to look.
Wow.
But anyway, yeah, man.
Oh, look, you've got double trouble.
I'm glad you got a replacement, Ralph, for the copy.
No. I drew that myself and threw that in there.
Did you replace this? Is this
Yeah,
the new one?
this is a real one.
That's the real one.
If you look in the
He
album,
replaced it. He replaced it with a copy from Timu. That's not even
We're
an
gonna look
original.
inside. It's actually that shitty Van Hagar live album.
Yeah,
It's a band called.
yeah,
It's a band called Dukin.
yeah. I put in some Vangina albums in there for it.
He did.
Hey, well, this says something about us as human beings. We both have Piece of the East on vinyl.
Yeah,
I don't even
actually,
know Beast in the East on vinyl.
I just got it. But
Yeah, now it's envious.
So I think we talked enough about Dave. Happy birthday, Diamond David Lee Roth.
70 years. Should we move on to Saxon?
Now we move on to Saxon.
Nice.
And we're going to talk about our top 5 Saxon songs.
Yep.
First time I've heard of Saxon, didn't really hear their music, but I heard they were opening for Rush on the Permanent Waves tour down here. And I remember like on the radio, it's like opening heavy metal band Saxon. I was like, heavy metal, because back then I was like, oh, if it's heavy metal, I want to hear it. I didn't get to hear Saxon till Strong Arm of the Law. I didn't hear Wheels of Steel or the first album. And I became huge into the next album, Denim and Leather, which is still my favorite. And I saw the tour opening for Triumph on the Allied Forces tour. Can you imagine that shit? Allied Forces. Wow. And those are my 2 favorite albums from these bands.
Wow, that's
Allied
amazing.
Forces. Wow, I think that's her best album.
Wow.
Yeah,
it is their best album for sure.
Mind-blowing show, and I got to see Saxon. Then I didn't get to see Saxon for till I flew to New York to see them with UFO maybe 10 years ago or so. Mm-hmm. But I'm a huge Saxon fan. I drove to Tampa to see them, and luckily their last tour they played down here, so I don't have to drive far. I love Saxon, man. One of my favorites.
Great band.
Kept up with all their new albums are great. Wasn't too crazy about the last one, I'll be honest, but
yeah, I was disappointed too. I had a couple of good songs.
I thought
that was okay.
Carpe Diem was much better.
I thought is the greatest album they've done since Power and the Glory, my opinion. I think that album is just flawless. Every song kicks ass. It was like they blew their load on Carpe Diem.
They had a pretty good run, I think, even before that. I really love Battle and Ram. I thought was really good.
I think every album up to the last was
that was like the peak, of
Metalhead, Into the Labyrinth.
Well, Saxon was they come out, you've got all your classic Saxon albums, and then they suffered the fate that so many bands did trying to have hits, especially in America. In the late 80s, they started going a little more commercial. So with starting around Crusader basically, and then going into Rock the Nation and Destiny, they were like really commercial sounding albums, and that was the singles that were getting released from it and stuff.
Yeah, but
then they didn't even put anything out in the States for a couple of years. You could only get their stuff as the imports, and it was like the Dogs of War record. They came back with that, man. They were like full on metal. I mean, it was like heavy, and then it's like Unleash the Beast was after that, and that was even heavier. And they've got heavier over the years. I mean, their stuff is like, some of their stuff is like, borderline speed metal, at times. It's just heavy stuff, a lot of fast-paced stuff.
Yeah, and they bring it live still.
They bring it live. They always do, man. They're such a great live band. I didn't see them until the Unleash the Beast tour was my first time seeing them. I guess I got into them probably late 80s. I remember seeing a couple of videos like Power and Glory and stuff, which is a pet peeve. That video is a pet peeve with me because they hacked that song all up for the video. but yeah, then they had, like Broken Heroes and stuff like that. So they were kind of getting on my radar. I started picking up some Saxon records. I think the first thing I got was Crusader, and then I think I moved on to like Wheels of Steel, and kind of from there. And but yeah, when Unleash the Beast came out, they were on CMC Records then, which was a little indie label, which was out of North Carolina here where I live at. So a friend hooked me up with some promo stuff for that, and just loved it. Got to go see them, and got to meet them and everything afterwards. And yeah, it was great. They didn't have. I remember they didn't have Nigel Glockner wasn't doing that tour. They had a fill-in drummer, but he came back for the next tour. And yeah, I've seen them. God, I've probably seen them 10 times or so since then, because they started back coming to the States again. And they just continue to come back each year, and always a great show. And Biff, I mean, like we were just talking about David Lee Roth is 70. Biff is like, was he like 73, 74, something like that? I mean,
he still has his voice, unlike Dave.
And he sounds amazing. He
had
that
cool long gray mane of hair.
God, man, I'd love to have a mane of hair like that
wizard
for that age. I mean, good Lord's got a great hair for that age. Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, he looks great. He sounds great. He had a little health scare a couple years ago. He had to have some kind of heart surgery or something, but they got his ticker working. And he and Nigel Glockner they've been in. I think Nigel came in on what was it? Maybe was it Crusader or Power to Glory? He came in. I can't remember. It was out with the live album. He came in like for the live album actually, and Eagle Has Landed. He's still with them. Paul Quinn retired a couple years ago, so he's no longer touring with them, but he was with them up for a long time. I watched Paul always looked kind of sluggish there on those last couple of tours that I saw. He always played great, but he looked really sluggish, like he was getting old, and it was time that he was tired of touring, because he was very, very animated back in their younger days. If you remember, he was running all around the stage. He had to spin it, the guitar on the axle. He would spin around, and I always thought that Paul looked like back in the day when he had the ratty hair and all. He kind of looked like Clint Howard, Ron Howard's brother, Clint Howard. I always thought
the fucking guy
Clint.
that's like in the
yeah. I always thought Paul Quinn looked like Clint Howard. It's just hilarious, but yeah, such a great guitar player, man. And I mean, Graham Oliver was great back in his day, and then they've got Doug Scarrett came in, replaced him, such a great player. Nibs Carter, great bass player. Steve Dawson was great back in his day. He got in some trouble recently and stuff, like supposedly some sex scandal stuff or something, some petty stuff or something. That's a shame, because Steve Dawson is who Derek Smalls is modeled after in Spinal Tap. Totally. I mean, they just gave him Derek Smalls got long hair, but he has the Fu Manchu mustache and the whole thing with the fist in the air while he's playing. Totally.
That fits the timeline too of when
when they were filming Spinal Tap, the members of Spinal Tap went on tour with Saxon. It was went on tour with to get the vibe of what it's like to be in a touring band. So yeah, Spinal Tap hooked up with Saxon.
They probably tripped because they were like, we thought these guys partied and they're all drinking tea.
Yeah, they all drank shit.
Yeah, they talk like I think the only one I ever heard that actually ever had a drug issue was Steve Dawson, and that was when they went on tour with Motley Crue, and he tried to keep up with Motley Crue. They were touring the States, I think, during the Shot at the Devil period.
If you think about it, Spinal Tap didn't do drugs.
That's true. Yeah.
Doing drugs. Yeah.
Come to think about it, they didn't.
There was no drug taken in the Spinal Tap movie. So
they were fucking around though. They had herpes.
You only catch that once though. It's okay.
Yeah. Such a great band though, man. Yeah, so many great albums. I think
the problem with Saxon for me is that Def Leppard became huge, and the record company was like, look, you're a new wave of British heavy metal band. Look what Def Leppard did. Go the route of Def Leppard. I honestly believe if they would have released all these later albums back in the 80s. Let's say even Crusader could have used a little more heaviness.
Oh yeah, I really only like the title track. I think
Yeah,
the
me
rest
too.
of that,
Some
like,
good
But you
stuff
get,
on there. I like that album. I guess it's
but,
because it's my first.
but you get like, Metalhead, Into the Labyrinth, Thunderbolt. If those albums were released in the 80s, because that's when people had attention spans, because now they're releasing albums that everybody should love if you love that early Saxon, but nobody would give it a chance. But you would have paid attention to it in the 80s. Because once they got to Innocence is No Excuse, it turned a lot of people off. It wouldn't have turned them off if Thunderbolt was the album they released instead. You know what I'm saying?
Oh
but
yeah,
then they would have been like competitive with Maiden, who was
Yeah,
their
it would have.
yeah, totally. I will say that one of their most commercial songs though was the cover of "Ride Like the Wind," the Christopher Cross songs, and I love their version. I think it's great.
I used
Do
to
a
have.
kick-ass version of that.
Yeah, I
I
don't like that album for the most part, but that's probably one of the
That
better songs. But it's a
I
cover.
that
I
that cover's great.
I used to rehearse at this warehouse with the band next to me. They were an amazing band, black thrash band called Devastator. They were fucking amazing. They all of them agreed. The greatest Saxon song is that cover.
Wow.
I wouldn't go that far, but
I
it's a
agree.
great cover. It is a great
And
cover.
they all also agreed the greatest Iron Maiden song. All five of them agreed on this. The greatest Iron Maiden song is Infinite Dreams.
Well, there you go. They needed Q-tips.
Yeah, no shit. You know?
They
But,
have
all right, hey Edwin,
Wax buildup.
Eddie,
yes.
I got your album. Tell me what you feel about Saxon, bro. How did you discover Saxon, first of all?
I definitely late in the game, very late in the game. Believe me, in the States, and keep in mind, in my age bracket, late '80s, despite their efforts, no one was talking about Saxon in America in the late '80s, unless you were maybe already fans in the early '80s. At least none of the kids I knew, none of the metalheads I knew, no one was talking about fucking Saxon. They didn't show them on Headbangers Ball. I did not even know Saxon existed. They were obviously I knew Maiden, I knew Diamond Head, I knew like bands that Metallica covered, but Metallica never covered Saxon, so I didn't know about them. So I didn't even know they existed until maybe I was like in my late 20s, maybe. It was when the internet started to be kind of a thing. I guess I would say late 90s, early O's. I started to get interested in the new wave of British heavy metal. And just as a concept, and I was getting into like, that's when I didn't listen like Judas Priest or much Iron Maiden. I was kind of a casual Maiden fan, but I wasn't really into that. That was all a little bit before when I got into it. I got kind of into stuff in the late '80s, so that stuff felt a little bit like the wave before I got into shit. But then I got into I was getting into Priest and Maiden, the classic stuff in the early '80s. I got into the Paul Di'Anno era Maiden, and I was getting into like I was very into like British Steel and stuff like that, and I was getting very into and Diamond Head, like the Lightning to the Nations like album and stuff like that, and it was just like I kind of fell down that new wave British heavy metal rabbit hole, and obviously you're gonna hit Saxon pretty quickly once you do that because they were one of the biggest bands from that era. So I got like Wheels of Steel and Strong Arm for the Law, and I probably let Denim and Leather shortly after that. For a long time, those were like the only three albums I had. But I did love them, and I listened to them a lot. But I think I sampled some of the late '80s stuff when they were going more commercial, and I kind of wrote them off like, oh, I guess they just kind of started sucking. And I didn't dive deep enough to find out that they had this whole renaissance. And it wasn't until like maybe 5 years or so later that I discovered, oh, Saxon kind of had a rebirth in the mid '90s and he started to be good again. And then I went back and started to get their stuff. Now I kind of think of myself as a casual Saxon fan, but I own every album of theirs. So I don't know, most normal people would probably think, I mean, considering how big their discography is.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I have every one, even the
Huge.
shitty late '80s albums. I have them all. I have every Saxon album. So I guess I am a fan. I'm not like I don't have the greatest knowledge of them, but I know the basic strokes and I have all their albums. I did do a video ranking all their albums, and but I got to tell you, I think they're very consistent, with the exception of that late '80s period. They are kind of like Motorhead or Overkill. They're one of these bands that I almost feel, and Ralph has said this once about Overkill. Sometimes like the consistency is almost like they almost have too many albums, that like sometimes it gets a little like I take them for granted sometimes because they have so many fucking albums. And I listen to them and like yeah, the last wave were great, but they even have like I was just like thinking like I was thinking like what are those albums in the early to mid 2000s that are really good? I was like, oh yeah, Killing Ground was really great. I really like that album. And then there's the album afterwards. There was that the Lionheart. Lionheart was a really great album. I was like, they just have a lot of really great albums that because they have so many albums, they get kind of lost in the shuffle, because they're just so prolific that it's hard to keep up with all these great albums they've done over the years. But yeah, when you like, they're the kind of band that you'll be like playing it for me. Like I'll be playing like a metal shuffle on my like iTunes, and a really awesome song will come up. It's like, yeah, that's a really great Saxon song. What album's that on? And then I'll go because they just put out so many fucking albums. But I, despite thinking they're really consistent and I really like most of their albums, I do focus on those three albums from the early '80s. Those are the ones I do go back to the most still to this day. And I would say Denim and Leather is my third favorite. Wheels of Steel for a long time was my favorite, but these days I go Strong Arm. Strong Arm, I think, is my favorite Saxon album. And whenever I listen to a Saxon album, it's usually that one. So I guess that means it's my favorite. That's usually the one I go back to. And as much as I love the later stuff they've done, and even that like mid '90s to kind of mid 2000 period, which is really strong too. I still there's something about that early new wave British heavy metal version of Saxon. Just the production. I think that's a big thing too. Is I just love the sound, the grittiness of those early '80s productions. It's like I'm like that way with like early '80s like slasher films and stuff like that. Like I just love the grittiness of the early '80s. I just love the guitar tones and that vibe of that period. So that's definitely the Saxon I go to the most. And when we did this top five thing, which I came off my top five like really quick after I got out of the shower, and it had to be all like songs from Wheels of Steel and Strong Arm because those are the two albums that I listen to the most, and I love every song on those albums. But that even though I focus more on those two albums, they do have a really great discography, and they definitely are a band that better than Maiden. Like I'll say this, I think Maiden have about five or six albums that I think are better than any Saxon album. But once we get into the '90s, like Saxon leaves them in the dust.
Oh,
Like
for sure.
that's the thing,
Yeah.
and they're far more consistent, and that's the thing. But they don't have Eddie, That's the thing. They don't have Eddie, and because of that, and maybe like I would say Maiden was stronger in the '80s musically, but the like Saxon's not a band that's living off the laurels of their past like Maiden is, in my opinion. Like Saxon's got to be hungry and out there and still putting out great records, and that's something I really respect about them. And I mean, definitely, there's no question. Like the newer Saxon albums are like so much better than like the newer Maiden albums to me.
I agree.
Yeah.
Some might not, but I agree. Really are.
They're just so much livelier and punchier. And I know they do have a few more younger members in their band, so
I,
but
slightly off the subject. Somebody left a very interesting comment on one of my videos that I never thought of before. It was a video I made about Rob Halford saying, "I'm here, I'm queer, get used to it."
Yeah.
Somebody left a comment going, "This is why Iron Maiden is bigger than Judas Priest now, because there's too many homophobes in metal." Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it sure does make some sense because Judas Priest is releasing better music. Come on.
Oh, there's no question.
Than Maiden.
Priest is
I mean,
so much better. Like Saxon, these days there's no question. Priest is
no, yeah,
Priest albums have been so much better than Maiden. And Rob Halford sounds so much better in Bruce Dickinson live these days.
exactly. And yet they're playing smaller venues. Could it be because of homophobia? I don't know or not, but it does kind of make sense.
It might be. I mean, I do go on that Mofos of Metal page, and they are pretty homophobic. So it's fine.
Well,
There's
my
still
my take on that is, I think Maiden has become, they've got this cult following, kind of like the Grateful Dead, that just go see them. They don't even, they'll go buy whatever they put out and they'll go see them wherever. I mean, I just,
Don't you think a lot of it is really Eddie? Come on, it's Eddie.
Yeah, but homophobes don't do that, Tony.
I agree. There might be an element of homophobia. I agree with that, but
Homophobia do not start cults for bands.
I think that I think that it's Derek Riggs, right? Who created Eddie. That guy. I hope he has a good deal where he makes the money he deserves, because I cannot imagine, as great as their first 5 albums, in my opinion, are. There's no Maiden is big because of Eddie. That it's like Star Wars shit or Kiss, the makeup. It's this image.
Possibly,
Do you
yeah.
think that Maiden would be as big if they didn't have Eddie, like today?
I mean, that
What
mascot has sold a lot of T-shirts. That's for sure.
what I want to know is, how did Iron Maiden become big with Eddie and Riot didn't come out and get big with his little seal?
I know that seal is so much better than Eddie.
Yeah. I mean, look, we can all agree, man. After Derek Riggs was gone,
Oh,
the
but it didn't matter. It's because of what he did in the 80s. Those images, like not just the album covers, like the single covers, and just the idea of Eddie, that was, from a marketing standpoint, I think it's the most important piece of marketing for a band since Kiss. That's the only thing you can kind of compare it with, is Eddie and Kiss. And the thing is, like Kiss, at least, like those guys, they actually were the mascots. Like they put on the makeup, they're actually out there playing and doing it. Whereas Eddie, like, he's just this fucking mummy, like, prop. But
Yeah.
It's bringing in all these fans and money for the band.
There is no other mascot bigger than Eddie. That's for sure.
Nothing even comes close to me. Nothing comes close. And I think when all is said and done, the reason why Maiden is bigger than Priest, it's because of fucking Eddie. I think that's the main reason.
I agree. I totally agree. But I can't help but think of the homophobia thing. It's like,
There's probably an element of homophobia as well.
maybe that has something to do with it. Like Tony was saying, Iron Maiden's got cults of people, but homophobes do not get cults of people.
Well, that's the thing. With Priest, like, they're a very sexual band, because Rob Halford is a sexy, sensual gay guy who's into.
Yeah,
like,
but you know what I don't get about Priest fans, when they bring up songs like "Eat Me Alive," oh, spread eagle to the wall, you're equipped to take it all. Oh, that's gay. Wait a second. That could be about a girl. Jawbreaker. Oh, sucking dick. Yeah, but girls suck dick too.
Yeah, and he's thinking that you could think whatever you want to think.
No, but then Grinder looking for meat. How is that gay? But if you really want to look for gay lyrics from Rob Halford, go to the Sin After Sin album.
Oh, Raw Deal.
The Raw Deal.
Raw Deal, Fire Island.
About going to a bar in Fire Island. Now that's gay.
Yeah.
Nobody brings up that song.
But again, at least it's like rock and roll should be about sex. That's the thing. So he's singing about sex, whereas Maiden is like sexless, especially after Paul Di'Anno leaves the band, in my opinion. And I love those first 3 albums of Bruce Dickinson. They're awesome. But Maiden's like, and I said this in my Maiden video. I said they like the perfect dad metal band because they're like Ekpok Center. you know, or like the History Channel with metal. Like they're very like chaste. They're very like stately and kind of sexless. So they're the kind of music like a 50-something-year-old nice guy dad, a basic guy can listen to. But he can't play like, you know, like some sexy fuck. He can't play Jawbreaker in front of his wife, you know? That stuff's dirty. You know, Priest is like
So
dirty.
he, so he, yeah, so he'd rather play. You know, he's going to put on the loneliness of the long distance runner
Yeah.
for his wife.
That's like stately masterpiece theater fucking metal. Judas Priest is like fucking
Masterpiece theater metal. That's perfect. Yes,
yeah.
yes, yeah.
All
And
Count
right.
Ralph has asked it
Hey,
about the Count Ralph has asked about did we have the Saxon book? Mark Popoff did. Yes,
I have it
yes,
actually in an ebook.
yeah. It's a good book. It's just
Yeah,
very detailed, very
great.
detailed for each album. Yeah,
Yeah, I won that because I do trivia on the Contrarians. I've done 10 Contrarians trivia. Out of the 10, I won 9 of them.
wow,
One
cool.
that I lost, I questioned that one actually. I think I won that one too. But anyway, when you win, you get to pick your Martin ebook. And yeah, Power and the Glory was one of them that I picked. Yeah,
Yeah,
good stuff, man.
killer.
Popoff rules. I got to get Martin Popoff on our show again.
Yeah, yeah. We
I
need to
just
have
got to
that.
figure out, like, when he releases a book, we talk about that band.
Yeah,
But anyway, hey, Tony.
he's got a new Priest book out that he
All
just
right,
put
well,
out.
I'll
Yeah.
hit him up, see if he wants to do a pre.
And then you could ask him the homophobe question.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Tony, give me your full 5. What is your top 5 Saxon songs?
Well, first, I wanted to give our buddy Travis hit me up as we were going on tonight and asked me would I tell his top 5.
Yeah.
And he has Travis picked Machine Gun, Taking Your Chances, another cool one. Wheels of Steel, Motorcycle Man, and Dallas 1 p.m. That was Travis's pick.
Nice.
that's a
Good
solid.
picks there, Travis.
Great.
My pick. So you may go ahead and give the top 5 picks. I'm gonna go number 5 from the Denim and Leather record, the song "Princess of the Night." Just great riff, and you know, I'm much like Ed. All my picks are going to be from the early days. I love some of the later stuff, but those classic records like the first 4 or 5 are my favorites. So Princess of the Night, that's the single for that. That's great riff in that song. And you know, it's about this steamroller that brings the mail, you know, through the ice and snow. And Biff said that, you know, he'd met people, like he met a girl in Japan once that said, I am the princess of the night. He said, no, you're a steamroller. You know, so
I never knew what the song was about. Wow.
yeah, I'm sure they have, you know, the few female Saxon fans back in the day would go, oh wow, it's a song about me. So number 4 on my list, the title track from Crusader. Great album cover on that one as well. Yeah, but yeah, I love this song. Just an epic track, you know, just the Crusaders marching off to battle. Just yeah, excellent track. Great guitar solo in that one. The first time I ever saw Saxon was on the Unleash the Beast tour, like I said earlier, and then they played Crusader about right before Paul goes into that epic guitar solo. He breaks a string and they had to change his guitar, so they're just playing the rhythm. And I remember Biff saying, damn, that sucks, because that's the best part of the song. Yeah. My number 3 pick, got to go to the Strong Arm of the Law album. Got to do Dallas 1 p.m. About the Kennedy assassination. Just an epic tune. I love the studio version. It just starts off with the bass, and then the first guitar comes in with the down, and then you got another guitar coming in, and I think it's something like 6 guitar tracks on that at the beginning, because you got another one coming in playing another riff, then another riff, and it's like they're all on top of one another, and it's like really cool. It just builds as it goes. Great track from that. So number 2, I'm going to go to the Denim and Leather record, and my favorite track on there is "And the Band Played On," or "The Bands," plural, "played on." That's a single from that. And that's about when they played the first Castle Donington Fest in 1980. And it's just Biff writing his experience about coming out, sun is shining, and he just sees, 50,000 fans, and he just was blown away. He went back and wrote a song about it, and it's just a great song. Got another great lead on that one. And my number 1 is going to be the title track from the album, "The Power and the Glory." And such a great track. It's just a metal anthem, to the power and the glory, raise your glasses high. And just a great track on that one. Cool riff, kind of a riff that's been used a lot. Almost 2 minutes to midnight. I mean, somebody did a YouTube video about how many times that riff has been used in metal songs, but it works, and it's perfect in this song. My friend,
Flash Rocket, except
yeah, that's another one.
Flash Rocket Man.
Our friend King Fowley, King's band October 31 did a cover of that, and just did it made it their own. I mean, they always end every show with it, and King holds up a big Saxon banner on stage. And I remember they recorded that on I think it was on the Meet Thy Maker album. They did a cover of that, and King gave me one of the CDs. I was going out to meet the band after the show that night. We were at Jack's, and I gave Biff a copy of the CD. It's like, "Hey, you got to check this out. These guys are really good." And but yeah, just a great band. Travis even mentioned a song that I thought about too, which is for honorable mention. "Susie Hold On." What a poppy song! But he was like, that should be an American radio standard. And it is. I mean, I don't know. I guess if they'd had a better record label at the time, that might have been a big radio hit for them. But they were on a French label called Career Records, which was distributed over here, I guess, by Sony. And they didn't get much radio play over here. Maybe in Texas. I think Saxon was always big in Texas, because that famous DJ there, what was his name, Joe Anthony, played Saxon, just like he played Budgie and several like other obscure bands that were very popular in that area only, it seems like. But yeah, so that's gonna be my top 5 picks. What you guys got?
What you got, Cannistraci?
I'm very impressed by Tony's knowledge. That man knows his fucking Saxon. And
Love Saxon.
very impressive. Like I said, all these come from Wheels of Steel and Strong Arm of the Law. Those are the albums I go. But Strong Arm of the Law, man, that album, that fucking production, just I love it.
What a great album cover too. I mean,
I love everything. What's crazy? Wheels of Steel and Strong Arm of the Law, both 1980. Like
bands would put 2 albums out, a lot of times back.
It's like Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath both did that. Their first 2 albums. They both bands, both Zeppelin and Sabbath, their first 2 albums are 1 year. That's amazing. Like, no, these days, like I get in fights with those like Bon Scott conspiracy theorists that think like he wrote lyrics Back in Black. Like, well, how could AC/DC do an album like Back in Black in 3 months? I was like, because that's how people fucking did it.
That's the way you did it back then.
That's how AC/DC did it, even before Back in Black. How long you think it took them to do Highway Out? Fucking 3 months. That's how they did it. That's how bands did it back then. They weren't like the Beatles did like 2 albums a year in the mid-60s. Kiss, when they were doing their best shit in the late 70s, they were like, it was like 2 albums a year. Like, and I was like, you look at that. It's like in my opinion, the 2 best Saxon albums, 1 year, fucking 1980. And I agree with Ralph. The greatest year in music, 1980. Fucking how many great albums? 1980.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and they just knocked it out. They just knocked that shit out. Anyway, so So as much as I love their whole discography, and I think it's a very strong discography, yeah, I go to those two albums. And my number five is I was pleased to hear Travis say it because I felt this was a deep track that no one else would talk about. But I love Taking Your Chances, my number five. That song is so fucking badass. That guitar tone, the fucking guitar parts, and it goes to all these really cool parts and that riff. I would say the only thing that's kind of close is like maybe early 80s, late 70s Priest. Just you got that perfect guitar tone, and the two guitars, the two guitar lines kind of dancing with each other, and then the way it kind of rages out at the end too. It's fucking awesome. Also a little like
Yeah.
late 70s Motorhead, a little of that, it's got that kind of
Yeah.
overkill kind of trashy sound to the guitar. That's what it's to say. It just sounds kind of trashy sounding. Fucking love Taking Your Chances. Badass song. Number four, classic, the title track, Wheels of Steel. Love that fucking song. That has almost kind of an AC/DC groove to it, kind of somewhere between. I know somewhere if you love Priest, you love Motorhead, you love AC/DC, well, you should love Saxon because they're somewhere kind of in the middle of all that. And Wheels of Steel is a classic, great live. Whenever they did it live, they got like, they would play it out, and love that song. Number three, which I have a feeling we might all have, Talus. You know, that song is perfect. It's kind of like Wheels of Steel. It's kind of a
What was
mid-tempo.
the song?
The Dallas, PM one.
Dallas. Oh, Dallas 1 p.m. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Dallas 1 p.m. The JFK song. Yeah, Dallas 1 p.m. I mean, that's like one of the most popular songs. It's for a good reason. It's so catchy. Has kind of a bluesy almost quality. A little like ZZ Top meets Judas Priest, I would say. And it's like I'm also I'm interested in the JFK conspiracy. I always have been. I dived into it, so I appreciate them writing a song about it, and just the vibe of the song, the music, the atmosphere. It's just so badass. It's like perfect early '80s hard rock straddling metal kind of song. So yeah, Dallas 1 p.m. Strong three, two. Love the song. Also from the same album, To Hell and Back Again. To Hell and Back Again. Such a badass song. Uh,
The last time I saw Saxon, they played that song.
oh,
Hmm.
that's awesome. They
And I
never.
was like, holy shit, man.
Wow.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So yeah, one of their heaviest songs, kind of like early Diano Maiden. This one, it's just like thundering. It's fast. It's a little thrashy, a little proto thrashy, a lot of different parts, and it's just the guitar lines, everything. I mean, I just love this song. This is the only one that was almost number one for me, but I love To Help and Back Again. But I gotta say, this is probably their most melodic song from the '80s. Is my number one choice, in my opinion. It's like their catchiest song. And to me, it's a perfect song, and it's 747, in parentheses, Strangers in the Night. I
Yeah.
don't normally like parentheses in songs, but I'll give this one a pass. 747. To me, this kind of foreshadows Dokken a little bit. It's like perfect melodic metal. It's a mid-tempo, poppy. Like that song should have been a hit song, in my opinion.
Do you-
And
Have you ever noticed it's almost two storylines, and you've got the people that are like, I guess they're meeting through the plane as they're strangers in the night, and then you've got the story about the pilots trying to land the plane.
yeah, I
You
feel
can't
like maybe
see.
that's like it justifies the two titles in a way. That's why the parentheses doesn't really bother me so much. But yeah, and it's just the different guitar lines and the melodies of that song, and it just has a vibe. And that vibe of early '80s metal, like everything, like because I like catchiness, I like hooks, I like melodies. That's why I call it like what Don Dokken would call melodic metal. To me, this perfect melodic metal, like early Def Leppard, early Motley Crue, Rat. I love a lot of that shit. So it's not until like the mid to late '80s I think that stuff started to be weak. And to me, this is like their catchiest song, and I've just always loved 74, 747. Like that's the song that got me like because Wheels of Steel was the first Saxon album I got. When I got that and they got that song, I was like all in. I was like, that was song. So still to this day, that's the song that moves to me the most. I love it. So there you
Right
go.
on. All right, here's my five. Now, before I get into it, I gotta mention a couple songs that really hurt leave off. One, a very deep track that's extremely commercial off of Denim and Leather, a song called Out of Control. I
Great.
fucking love that song.
That's a good track, man.
I
Yeah.
love it. It's melodic. It's not kind of like the rest of the album. Not really a metal song, a cool melodic killer. That didn't make my list. 747 didn't make my list. That hurt. 20,000 feet. That hurt.
Oh, that's a good
To leave off my list. Power and the Glory. I left off. That hurt.
Yeah, that was my sixth. That was tough.
That hurt. All right. There's a few more, but here's my 5. Number 5, and unlike Tony, I'm not a big fan of the album, but I love the song Crusader. That song is fucking amazing. You see, back in the day, they gave that song on the Metal Shop. And I heard Crusader, oh my God, the new Saxon, you know. That's at number 5. At number 4, Off Unleash the Beast.
Ooh.
A song called Blood Letter.
Oh, that's a badass tune.
That song fucking owns. That's why it made my list. And number 3, and yeah, it hurt leaving other songs off this album, but number 3, Dam Busters from Carp Diem.
Wow.
Fucking amazing song. I love the title track too. That was another one hard to leave off. But I love Dam Busters. That's such a badass song. Number 2, Heavy Metal Thunder.
Love it.
From I love both those albums that released in 1988, but if I had to pick, I'd go with Strong Arm of the Law, man.
Yeah, that's what I go with.
That album, yeah, To Hell and Back.
It's a little dirtier.
Fucking Hungry Years.
Yeah.
That riffage in Hungry Years, holy crap, is that awesome?
It's definitely my favorite. Yeah, and Heavy Metal Thunder was another one I thought about.
I love Midnight Rider off of Denim and Leather, and the band played on. Awesome song, man.
Those 3 albums to me.
Girls.
Yeah. Fire in the Sky.
Fire in the Sky is my favorite. That was another one that almost made my list.
Yep, that's awesome songs. But yeah, Heavy Metal Thunder is my number 2. My number 1 Saxon song is Princess of the Night. The greatest Saxon song in my opinion. That fast riffage in the beginning. That's the greatest Saxon song in my world. Princess of the Night. And I'm always happy that they always play it for me every time I see it. And that's my Saxon list, man.
Solid list. You can't.
Yeah, man. You can't go wrong. Hopefully, I saw someone said that they needed Music Taker said he needs to do a Saxon binge. Yeah, good. Dive into it, man. So much good stuff.
I was at Denim and Leather. The title track was another song I thought of. It didn't make my top 5, but I love that song. That's a
metal anthem. Totally.
Yeah, I think of all the early 80s metal anthems, I think that's my favorite one. I really love Denim and Leather.
Hell yeah. Well,
great riff.
Yeah, amazing riff.
And this was a great episode once again. Almost Human always delivers, man. And I want to thank you, Eddie. Eddie, give us a plug, man. I know you got a couple of things out there.
Yeah, I have these days the main focus is my YouTube channel, Edwin Cannistraci. And yeah, I do music and movie reviews, and I kind of dive deep into shit, and a lot of heavy metal and hard rock. And if you like this kind of conversations that we're having here, well, doing that, I just did a Black Sabbath video where I was dealing with all those guys on the with the Mofos and Metal page that diss on Black Sabbath.
Oh yeah.
Got me angry. So that was actually part of a video that I'm actually working on now, which is
you said they disowned Black Sabbath?
They dissed.
But these are just people looking.
Yeah, I think it's like 5 or 6 trolls on this page.
People like that are just looking for a reaction. But I am to blame to being a troll as well on the Mofos and Metal because. Manowar is so like they're gods over there, but they have a big amount of people that hate Manowar. So every time Manowar comes up, I am there talking about how Manowar is the greatest thing ever. Like there was one thing that said Manowar versus Black Sabbath. I was like, fuck that hippie shit. Kill and kill Manowar. You know I don't feel that way, but I do that because it pisses off people.
It's fun. I actually like the group. Like people don't realize I like the
Oh,
group.
I
It's
like
I
that
think
group. It's
they're
funny.
like a comedy parody page. It's
Yeah,
funny.
it is funny, and there's a lot of like somebody will put a post saying Black Sabbath sucks, this and that. I reply with a picture. Like I reply with, Tony Iommi looking at a book saying,
That's my favorite
band's
one.
better than Black Sabbath. And there's nobody in the book.
I love that.
And I reply like that. I'm not going to argue with anybody that says Black Sabbath sucks. If you think they suck, that's your opinion. But
I don't
like
argue with the actual group. I just like watch it and I think, oh, well, that's good content for a video. Because I looked up, I was looking on YouTube. It's like, oh, no one talks about on YouTube about how there's all these like douchey metalheads that hate on Ozzy era Black Sabbath. So I guess I'll mention it. But it was part of this bigger video. I was doing this rank-o-rama and I kind of went off on a rant. And then I saw, I was like, oh, well, that's like 10 minutes. Maybe I should just throw that out there while I'm editing the bigger video. But a lot of people liked it, so you could check that out. But this week or next week will be the big Black Sabbath rankorama. That's the big one because I
right
never
on.
actually,
Looking forward to that.
yeah. So I rank, I'm including all eras, the Tony Martin, Dio, including the Heaven and Hell album because essentially that's Black Sabbath. So it's all ranked. So if you're interested in what I think of the Black Sabbath albums. That's going to be coming out in a week or two. So check out my videos. And I have a Saxon one too, where I reviewed every album of Saxon. It was a thing where I was going to, because they have such a big discography, I was like, I'm going to do it all in 5 minutes as a challenge with a 1 sentence review for every album. So if you want to see me review every Saxon album up to Carpe Diem with 1 sentence, check that out. That video's out there.
Right on, man. And Tony, you got anything going on, bro?
Oh, dudes talking metal. We've got one coming up soon. We're gonna have Dan Lorenzo from Hades, and he's got a new band, Patriarchs in Black, that we're gonna be interviewing him next week on that. I think that's gonna be coming out sometime next week, and going to see Testament and Possessed and who is it? Creator this weekend. They're playing here in Raleigh. Gonna go see them. And going to see the new Terrifier 3 movie this weekend.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I can't wait.
And believe it or not, I'm
gonna bring my barf bag that I won't be using.
Yeah, people been throwing up and shit on the first scene. People are saying people running out of the theaters. I didn't know nothing about this.
Pussies.
I never seen nothing about this Terrifier till Wayne Noon mentioned it on this show, and then I noticed it was on Tubi or something, and I watched it. I fucking fell in love with both movies, so I look forward to the third one.
Yeah, greatest horror villain in a while.
In a long time, yeah. I just loved when he does that laughing. He's like, and he does that shit. It's like, it's so fucking awesome. Anyway, Eddie, I know you've been through hell for the last 24 hours, and I appreciate you taking the time. You even told me.
Glad you're good, man. Glad everything's good your way, both of you.
I'm glad. Yeah, I had no problems down here, but Eddie did, and Eddie still got power. So my thoughts.
He's got a home to go to. That's awesome.
My thoughts are with Manny. Manny lives around and I'm not sure how good he's doing. I know he's got chick problems. That I do know.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully Manny didn't lose too much. He's already had some issues. Yeah, he had some flooding during the last storm.
And he was closer to the water, so yeah, he had it rougher than me.
Yeah. And Wayne couldn't make it tonight because he's got a bad case of hemorrhoids.
Ooh.
Very bad. He said it popped and bloody all over the place.
Pain in the ass.
Terrifier.
Pain in the ass. Yeah, he's got a pain in. Anyway, thank you both, guys, and thank you everybody out there watching. Thank you so much for keeping Almost Human alive, nice and well. I love doing this show because I know a lot of you love it, and a lot of you show up every week. And then after I put the video up, it gets even more views. It's fucking awesome. I love my subscribers. And remember, tomorrow on Almost Human, it's Rush Friday, starting at 12 noon with a track by track. Then I do a review of Caress of Steel, then another track by track, and there will be a Rush Only News That Matters tomorrow. So please tune in for that. And again, thank you everybody for watching. And thank you again, Tony and Edwin. Smack 'em. Oh, God.